Hi, welcome to Coturnix Corner. My name's Terry, and in this video we are going to talk a little bit about the Wynola Ranch 22-inch quail cage community. This cage is a standalone single compartment cage. Wynola Ranch sent me out a cage about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and I've had a chance to put it through its paces. I ran some jumbos through the cage, I ran some standard size quail through the cage, and I got a pretty good idea of how well the cage works and some of the stuff that I would either modify or ask Wynola Ranch to modify. First off, the cage is an all-wire cage. It measures 22 inches wide by 20 inches deep and 10 inches tall. The cage is built from 1 inch by 2 inch 14 gauge welded wire. The floor is 1/2 inch by 1 inch coated hardware cloth. The entire cage is assembled using your standard hog rings, and the legs are bolted on with 6 nuts and bolts, 3 on each side. The door measures 4 inches by 8 inches wide, and it is also made out of the 1 inch by 2 inch welded wire. Also on the door, it's got a little plastic strip. It's like a guard to keep you, when you're reaching in, you're not going to scratch the underside of your arm. The door also has a hog ring on the right side that you have to lift up to open the door, and then when you're done inside the cage, close the door, and that hog ring will drop back down and hold the cage, or hold the door in the closed position. Back to the floor, being 1/2 inch by 1 inch hardware cloth. The coated hardware cloth is great for the quail's feet. It's going to protect your quail's feet from getting like bumblefoot or any other foot problems caused by the rougher wire. The feeder that ships with the cage is an all metal feeder. Looks like galvanized metal, and it's got 2 little hook or notch cutouts on each end, which allows you to hang the feeder on the front of the cage. It also allows you to lift the feeder up to collect eggs that may have accumulated underneath the feeder. So that works out really well. As far as eggs go, the slope on the floor seems sufficient for the eggs to roll forward, and I didn't have any issues with any of the eggs hanging up inside the cage. There's also a piece of that plastic guard strip along the front of the egg rollout, and that is to protect the eggs from getting cracked or broken when they roll forward. The manure tray is made out of galvanized steel also, and it's cut to fit underside the cage. It's a 1/2 inch deep, and that was the only real issue that I had with that tray. I wish it was a little bit deeper so the manure didn't build up so fast and actually spill out over the edge. I would go maybe a day and a half, maybe 2 days at the most, before cleaning out the tray, or having to clean out the tray. Any longer than that, and you're going to have issues with buildup. Another issue that I had with the manure tray is being cut to same size as the cage. The birds can back up to the back side of the cage and poop out the back side, and it seems they miss the tray, and it goes on the surface, whatever you've got your cage sitting on. So if I was to make any recommendations to Wynola on that tray, I would make it a little bit deeper, maybe 3/4 of an inch or even an inch, and make it maybe 2.5 to 3 inches deeper. That would allow you to have a little bit of tray hanging out over the back of the cage, which will prevent that manure from missing the tray and landing on your table. Another thing you could do, I guess that would probably work, would be to take like a piece of plexiglass or even a piece of sheet metal and wire it to the back of the cage. That way they are not able to poop out the back. The sides of the cage have metal on both sides, so they can't poop out the sides. And I didn't run into any issues with the birds pooping out underneath the feeder and going on the table in front of the cage. The water container on the cage, the one that came with it was rather small. And I don't know if the cage ships with a water container or not, or if that's an accessory that you need to buy to add on. But the one they shipped me was probably about a quart-sized water container, and it has a little tire valve stem in it, which is what you hook all your your hoses to, which run down to the watering cups. I love that setup. You can take that same valve stem setup, drill a hole in a 5-gallon bucket or a 1-gallon bucket, whatever, install the valve stem, and you just increase the size of your watering system. The watering cups are your standard poultry watering cups, and I've been using them forever and I've never had a problem with them, so them seem to work good. I love the brackets. They got this really nifty little bracket that hooks on the back side of the cage. Watering cup hooks into that, and then you just run your flex tubing down to the watering cup. So I actually may even switch to that. Right now I'm using PVC to plumb all my watering cups. I'm thinking seriously about changing to this flexible tubing style, just to make it so much easier for cleaning out the entire system. And but yeah, okay, back to the cage. The height of the cage is sufficient for the male to mount the hens. I didn't have any issues with that. Breeding activity went on just as normal. As far as number of birds per cage, like I say, I ran the jumbos through and I ran the standard size quail through. The jumbos, at first I put 10 birds in the cage and that seemed a little bit crowded, so I pulled 2 out and I left 8 in there, and they did just fine with that. You could probably get away with 10 if you don't mind your birds being that crowded. I'm not a big fan of overcrowding, so I cut it back to 8. As far as the standard size quail, you could easily get away with 10, even 12 birds per unit. On the front of the cage, there are 2 vertical supports. At first I didn't know what they were. I thought they were some type of a divider to keep the birds separate while they were feeding. I had no idea. But then I figured out that those supports were actually supports to hold the front of the floor to give it a little more, make it a little bit sturdier, because you don't have anything along the front of that cage for them to run their hog wire or their hog rings to. So by putting them supports in, you've got supports on each end and also supports in the middle of the cage. So all in all, I do want to say that this cage is very well built. It's a good looking cage. To me, this would be a perfect cage for somebody that was just getting into quail. They don't want to make a major investment to build, big, multiple tiered cages. If they just want to get into quail to test the waters before they, dive in heavy, this would be an excellent cage to start with. Or if you just want to keep a few quail, this cage is small enough and nice enough to where you could keep it inside your house on a small table, and I think it would do just fine. As far as for a breeder, and this is what I'm going to use the cage for, specific breeding projects where you want to keep just so many birds, specific birds in one cage, so you know that the eggs that you're getting is from that group. Or if you want to use the cage as a hospital or a recovery type cage, should your birds get injured and you want to separate them from the other birds. It's, like I say, it's a nice little cage that will pretty much sit on any tabletop or bench. I don't think you'd really want to put it down on the floor, at least for me. I mean, I'm getting up there in my years, and to be able to bend down that far and get into the cage and collect eggs every day, it's just a lot easier to keep the cage up on a table. So, like I say, all in all, it's a really nice cage. I'm very happy with it so far, and I am going to, like I say, use this cage for my specific breeding projects. The only thing that I would recommend to Wynola, as far as feedback on the cage, I would like to see a little bit taller door. Instead of 4 inches tall, maybe make it 5 inches tall. Possibly make some type of a plastic guard that you could wire onto the back of the cage to keep the birds from pooping out the back, or increase the depth of the manure tray. I mean, by depth, I mean front to back dimensions. Maybe add on 3 inches. That way the cage will, or the tray will slide far enough back in the cage where you're not going to have an issue with poop missing the tray. And then maybe another, make the tray 3/4 of an inch, 1 inch deep. That way you don't have to clean it as often. But I guess, right now I'm cleaning my cages 3 times a day. Sometimes, I'm sorry, 3 every 3 days I clean my cages. Sometimes I'll push it to 4, but yeah, usually every 3 days. I would not want to let this cage go that far, just due to the fact with that shallow of a tray, I'm going to have issues with spillage. So the only other thing is, and I don't know this for a fact, but if this cage was modular, it would really be nice. I did not see anything on their website that shows how you could add onto this cage. So I don't know if they could actually feasibly make this cage modular. I mean, it's nice the way it is. It's nice as a single standalone unit. Like I say, for somebody that's just getting into quail, or for somebody that wanted it for like a specific breeding cage. So yeah, all around, I would say this is a very nice cage. If you have any questions on the cage, I would suggest contacting Wynola Ranch at their website. I believe their website is wynolaranch.com. That makes sense. And they can answer any of your questions that you might have on this cage or any of their other caging, because they've got some multiple multi-tiered cages that are really nice. So, you know, you might want to skip over this cage and go to a 2 or 3 tier. So that's about it for my input on this cage. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me today. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. It helps me out. You can get notified of any new and upcoming videos by hitting that notification bell. So again, if you have any questions on this cage, post them in the comment section down below. I try to get in there and answer questions as often as possible. But I do have to say that this cage is a decent cage. It's well built. It looks good, and I think you'd be very happy with it. And the price is only $99, so that's pretty inexpensive for an all-wire cage. So guys, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.